CNN's top-rated anchor, Chris Cuomo, has been pulled off the air, likely for good.
The Supreme Court will begin hearing arguments what could be the most important abortion rights case since Roe v. Wade.
Require vaccination universally. Have the military run it.
Chris Cuomo out at CNN. SCOTUS is taking on Roe versus Wade, and MSNBC hosts, or NBC hosts, whatever you want to call them, are saying ridiculous things yet again. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Daily Caller Live. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go.
That might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually their name, Jobob.
With an actually pretty nice hotel room in Phoenix, Arizona. We're coming to you abroad, outside of our regular studio today. Thanks so much for tuning in to Daily Caller Live on today. It is December 1st, the year of our Lord 2021, when everything went back to normal. 2021 is almost over, and things are not quite back to normal, as you might suspect. But a lot of stuff happening today that we want to talk about. Roe versus Wade is going to be a huge issue for the rest of the month, probably the rest of the year, especially on your cable news networks. Wanted to break down some of that. But first, I wanted to get to this. Chris Cuomo, brother of Andrew Cuomo, bro, Chris Cuomo, is out at CNN. We don't know for how long. They said indefinitely, but some pretty interesting things happened. So CNN, just to give you the lay of the land here, CNN has been losing a ton of ratings. There have been days where this show has beat CNN in viewership. Seriously, I can't believe it. It's true. But that is how bad CNN is currently doing with their online or with their TV broadcasts. But their lead anchor, Chris Cuomo, who anchored at 9 p.m. Eastern time every single night, pulled an average of 1.3 million viewers, is on an indefinite suspension by the company. Let me read from the Associated Press here, saying CNN's anchor pressed sources for information of his brother's accusers and reported back to the governor's staff. If you don't remember, Andrew Cuomo, former governor of New York, brother of Chris Cuomo, had to resign, not because he lied about the nursing home deaths, not because he covered up COVID death statistics, none of that sort of stuff, because he was super gropey, which is also terrible. We'll leave it at that. He should have resigned or should have been impeached for all of these other things, but what finally got him was being a creepy Cuomo pervo guy. But anyways, his brother has a show widely watched on CNN, widely watched in terms of cable news. This is not actually widely watched. 1.3 million people is what? 1/3% of the entire American population. So not that many people actually watch it, but it is their most watched show on CNN. He said that he was advising his brother on a lot of different ways to handle his sexual misconduct allegations. He said he was open about that, kind of wasn't actually, but he said, I advised him, and we talked and sort of stuff. Turns out he did a lot more than just advise him. Like the story read, the CNN anchor pressed sources for information on his brother's accusers and reported back to the governor's staff and was active in helping create their response for the charges, according to emails and a transcript of his testimony to investigators working for the state Attorney General Letitia James. So essentially, let me read on here and then we'll talk. The TV journalist offered to reach out to sources, including other reporters, to find out whether more women were going to come forward, and then relayed what he was hearing to his brother's advisors, according to the material made public on Monday. That came out on Monday. Chris Cuomo then did his show Monday, didn't talk about anything regarding him, didn't talk about any of his own issues, talked politics, COVID, all that sort of stuff. But then yesterday, it was released that CNN is going to suspend him indefinitely for blurring these journalistic family tie government relations lines that you can't do if you're a journalist or claiming to be a journalist on CNN. If you don't know the Cuomos, Mario Cuomo was the governor of New York. That is their dad, Chris and Andrew's dad. Mario Cuomo, governor of New York, well-liked in New York. But then Andrew Cuomo comes along, becomes a governor. They have a family line of powerful Cuomos. Chris is no different. You've got dad, former loved governor, Andrew Cuomo, also governor, Chris Cuomo, lead anchor on one of the big cable news channels. Big, powerful family. I feel like there is a culture in those types of families that feel like they can kind of get away with anything. So Chris Cuomo, even though he's supposedly a journalist, was pressing sources that he had, trying to figure out if more women were going to come out, as that would be bad for his brother. Then he would relay that information to his brother, telling him exactly what was going to happen and what he found out, and then advising him on how to interact with that situation, with the media, with the public, what his statements should be, all that sort of stuff. That is a massive no-no when it comes to being a journalist, as Chris Cuomo claims to be. If you're a journalist, you can't press your sources to the benefit of a government official, and it especially looks bad if your brother is the government official that you're quote-unquote helping. He also sparred with former governor aides over strategy, urging an apologetic tone and critiquing an earlier statement that he saw as downplaying the allegations. He accused the top aide of hiding information from his brother. Again, all big no-nos that you can't do if you're a quote-unquote journalist. Chris Cuomo previously acknowledged talking to his brother and offering advice when the governor faced harassment charges. Now, is that cool? Not really, but is it understandable? Look, their family, they talk, well, we can get into the whole Hunter Biden, Joe Biden thing and whether or not they talk about his business relationship. But I can see it kind of coming up saying, hey, look, I can't really talk about it, but maybe this is what we should do. But that was way not the extent of what Chris Cuomo was doing when Andrew Cuomo was facing these allegations. He was apparently, according to testimony released on Monday, very involved and very in the weeds in this situation that he shouldn't have been involved in given his position at CNN. Again, if you're just joining with us, Chris Cuomo has been placed on an indefinite leave. Tucker thinks that he's gone for good, but that remains to be seen. At the same time, Chris Cuomo told investigators he spoke regularly with his brother, coaching him on his responses for his bad judgment. The article before that says that, he had previously acknowledged it, but information shows that he definitely was doing way, way more than just kind of, giving some wishy-washy advice. Now, this is a huge problem, I guess we'll say, in Washington, D.C. and in big government in total. Obviously, they're not in Washington, D.C., they're in New York, but it's big government, big, powerful government players interworking with their families. We're not going to get into this super big right now. We talked a lot about it on Monday, but the Hunter Biden stuff that is coming out over the cobalt mine in Africa, selling it to the Chinese company. Now, all of a sudden, Joe Biden is pushing electric cars and Pete Buttigieg, everybody's wanting electric cars. That is really interesting. But the family ties between government and private sector and making them work together, never really a good thing to be seen. I want to transition to this. So this is something that's happening right now that is going to take a lot of news. Actually, you know what? Before we get to that, let me see if there's any. Here we go. Let's go back to this. I want to read some comments here. Blanca said CNN should be sanctioned. They absolutely knew. Yeah, that remains to be seen. We don't actually know if CNN knew, but it'd be hard to hide it from them. So that should be interesting. Kirk says we all need to get together and sue CNN. I'm not sure how we would do that, Kirk, but I like the sentiment. A lot of people commenting here. Adrian says CNN should be shut down. So yeah, we'll see what comes of it, whether or not CNN is going to. I don't think they're going to face anything legally speaking, but this is just a bad look on a media outlet that is getting less and less viewers. So back to this, SCOTUS to take on Roe versus Wade. So if you are aware and engaged in politics, you have heard all of the arguments from every single side, whether you believe in abortion, whether you don't. Everybody has their own personal issue or personal belief. You've heard everything. The goal here, and the reason I'm saying this, I don't want to beat a dead horse here. I know you've heard all of the arguments. I want to bring to light a couple polling truths regarding the legality versus people's personal opinion. Look, I have my own personal opinion on abortions. I wish people didn't have to get them. I think that's probably going to be pretty consistent with a lot of people tuning into this. So we've all heard those arguments. What I want to bring to light is a couple of the different statistics that mostly play on the legal side and clear things up, because what's going to happen is they're already doing this. This is an attack on the women's right to choose, on women's health care. Look, the left is very good at twisting words in such a way, or redefining things. Remember, abortion is called women's health care. They're trying to take away women's health care. That is not the case at all. So what I want to do here is kind of set the record straight and clear things up on what's actually happening, as opposed to what you're going to hear on your MSNBCs, your CNN, saying the government is trying to, the conservative justices are trying to take away women's health care. How could they do that? Because, yeah, that sounds bad, but that's not what's happening. Just a couple things that you should know. Justice Kavanaugh, Justice Roberts, and Justice Barrett are going to be the key players here. They are institutional judges, institutionalists, meaning that they don't necessarily like overturning precedent that has already been set. Whether or not you think Roe versus Wade is good legal precedent, it's there, and those three judges, which would be crucial to overturning Roe versus Wade, are more in the line of thinking, look, the Supreme Court in the past has already decided this. Maybe they change it, but their thinking in a lot of cases is we don't want to mess with the institution that has already been set before us. So there's that. They're going to be the people that they're going to be people to watch. Those three justices, Roberts, Kavanaugh, and Barrett. Again, institutionalists who don't necessarily like seeing precedent changed. Also, you're going to hear this constantly. You're going to hear this. People are going to be back in the alleys using coat hangers to get their abortions. They're repealing women's health care. That is not the case. Let's just say in a grand slam home run for conservatives, if Roe versus Wade were to be completely and utterly repealed, all of it completely gone, that wouldn't eliminate abortions throughout the country at all. It would mean it's up to the states. That's the thing that I think a lot of people, especially who look at this from a legal component, have a problem with Roe versus Wade. They have a problem with the federal government taking control of an issue and then that being used as precedent for the federal government to take and grab more power. So I'll say that again. You're going to hear this constantly. If Roe versus Wade were to get repealed, then all abortions would be illegal. We're going to have to do them in the back alley with a coat hanger. That is not true. Again, all that would mean, if Roe versus Wade were to get completely and entirely repealed, which I don't think is actually going to happen, regardless of whether or not you want it to happen, I don't think that's actually going to happen. If that were to happen, and it were a grand slam home run for the conservatives who want it to be completely, entirely repealed, that does not mean that abortions will be entirely legal across the country. That is not what that means. That's what the media is going to tell you. That's what the online Twitter mob is going to tell you, but that's not true. All it means is that those decisions will be left up to the states, which, by the way, is the way the federal government was supposed to work anyway. The federal government was designed to create some infrastructure and have a military. Everything else was supposed to be left up to the states. So there's a lot of legal experts that say Roe versus Wade is just bad case law, not necessarily regarding the abortion side, but the fact that the federal government is taking more power away from the states. So again, even if the entire thing goes away, all that means is the power goes back to the states, which is probably what was supposed to happen in the first place. Under Roe versus Wade, abortions are protected up to the point where a child can live outside the mother's womb. So that means that abortions are allowed supposedly the entire way through. Now, the Mississippi law that's being tried right now was specifically probably set up to test the bounds of Roe versus Wade. So what I think will likely happen, and honestly what I think probably should happen, is the Supreme Court, and again, this is outside of my own personal feelings about abortion and whether or not somebody should actually do it. This is strictly from what the American people say that they want and what is probably within the bounds of legality within the United States. Under Roe, abortion is protected up until the point where a child can live outside a mother's womb. What I think should happen, getting back to that, what I think should happen, what I hope happens, is we get some clarification, and hopefully that clarification reflects what the American people actually think. If you look at the polling, the overwhelming majority of Americans agree on abortion. That's a crazy thing to say that you probably never heard before. And again, this is personal feelings aside. I'm looking at the polling that says the overwhelming majority of people agree on abortion statistics. On the abortion issue regarding the overall concept and breaking it down by trimesters. This is interesting. I'm going to bring you some statistics here. During the first trimester, 61% of Americans say abortion should be legal in all cases. We're going to be hammering these the next couple weeks if this story continues to grow, especially when the ruling comes out. 61% of Americans believe in most cases abortion should be illegal within the first trimester. In the second trimester, that number falls off a cliff. It completely flips. In the second trimester, 65% of Americans, 2/3 of Americans, say that abortion should be illegal in most cases in the second trimester. In the third trimester, forget about it. 80% of America, 4 out of 5 people, don't think you should get an abortion in almost every single case in the third trimester. What I'm hoping will happen at the Supreme Court level is that they recognize what the American people say that they believe and adjust the rules accordingly. Because currently, right now, Roe versus Wade says you can get an abortion up till like the time that the baby can live outside. So you've got a pretty much fully formed child that can be aborted under Roe versus Wade. That is not what the American people think. The American people think, especially in the first trimester, absolutely effing no. No, and that's Democrats too. Democrats, Republicans, everybody agrees here. This is one of those things where everybody agrees. We can find common ground in this. A majority of people think first trimester, yeah, maybe we don't agree with it, but who actually knows? Second and third trimester, again, Americans agree. You can't get 8 and 10 Americans to agree on what the best, pizza topping is. You can't get 8 and 10 Americans to agree on anything yet. 80% of Americans agree that in the third trimester, you absolutely freaking not. So those are the statistics. Those are the statistics that the American people say they want when it comes to abortion. So hopefully, again, you've heard all the arguments of whether or not the child, not a child. Again, I have my own personal beliefs. I believe that you probably have your own personal beliefs. These are the statistics that the American people show that they think regarding abortion. It breaks down pretty dang clearly. First trimester, maybe I don't agree with it, but it is what it is. Second trimester and third trimester, absolutely not. Let me see if we can get to some comments here before we move on to the next topic here. Some of these are kind of long, so I'm not entirely sure if I can read them and be entertaining at the same time. Yeah, a lot of people saying that, the Democrats are going to blow this out of proportion, or liberals are going to blow this out of proportion and say that they're trying to eliminate women's health care. Again, don't buy it. And come ready with some arguments to say that, no, that's not true. I think a lot of people, especially on the left, get away with saying stuff like that, and nobody calls them on it. I think we need to understand, again, you've heard all the arguments, but we need to understand what is actually happening, because we need to understand what's actually happening. What's actually happening is if it were to be entirely repealed, if Roe would be entirely repealed, which I don't think that's going to happen. I think instead we're just going to get some clarification. But if that were the case, all that would happen is just go back to the states, which again is not what you're going to hear from your liberal media. So you heard it here first. We're going to probably play this clip over and over again as we contrast it with some of the news outlets that I'm sure are going to be pushing this nonsense that we're going to be in the back alleys with coat hangers. That's not true at all. I want to get to this. This was interesting. This was from Mad Money, James Cramer on CNBC. This is interesting. This is one of those things. Maybe he believes this. You can't say it on TV. This is like Dr. Fauci saying, "I am science." Jim Cramer said some ridiculous things on his show yesterday. Now, I want to play you this clip. It's a little bit long. It's a little less than a minute, but I wanted to play this, but I want to preface it with all of the things that we know. Here is what we know. The evidence that shows that if you get the COVID shot, this is regarding COVID shot mandates. Jim Cramer says some crazy about COVID shot mandates. Things that we know, things that the CDC says, there is not great evidence to show that you getting the COVID shot protects other people. If you want the shot, get the shot. You should get the shot. Statistically, it will protect you from death and hospitalization. I don't have a problem saying that. You should get it if you want it. But let's not pretend that getting the shot helps other people. That is a big narrative that's been pushed by your lefty media outlets and by your Twitter mobs. That is not true, according to the CDC. And how many of us believe the CDC when they tell us stuff a lot of the time? There's a lot of very questionable things the CDC puts out, but the CDC themselves said, if you get the shot, you can still have the virus and you can still spread it. That's coming from the CDC. So know that going in. The narrative that getting the shot protects other people is not true. And I wanted you to know that and be aware of it and have it at the front of your mind when we're listening to this clip from Jim Cramer. This is gnarly, so watch this and here we go.
Lord knows what happened if you didn't partake. But back then, anyone who refused to get vaccinated would get ratted out immediately because we knew that person could hurt other people. The commonweal was a commonweal. Now we're engaged in a similar struggle with COVID, and Eisenhower would be aghast. We have immunocompromised people who are incubators for every variant to come, walking around lawfully unvaccinated? That's psychotic. We have companies that have tried hard to get people vaccinated and now backing down. We have governors who want to be president by grandstanding on a foolish states' right issue, the right to get sick, get other people sick. So it's time to admit that we have to go to war against COVID. Require vaccination universally. Have the military run it. If you don't want to get vaccinated, you better be ready to prove your conscientious objector status in court. And even then, you need to help in the war effort by staying home until we finally beat this thing.
Okay, so Mad Money Jim Cramer is a crazy person, said a bunch of things that, look, and I wonder, does he actually know what the CDC themselves says, that getting the COVID shot doesn't necessarily, there is scant evidence that says that getting the COVID shot actually helps other people. It is a personal thing, and it's a personal thing, and that's fine. It is fine that it's a personal thing, but getting the COVID shot doesn't actually help people other than you, according to the CDC and pretty much everybody. You can still get the COVID shot, or you could still get COVID and you could still spread it. So this whole idea that you're protecting others, there's not a lot of evidence for that, especially there's not a lot of evidence for that. And he should know that. He's in the media. He also said he was also comparing it to polio. Jim Cramer was also comparing this to polio. He's talking about the polio vaccine. Yeah, polio was scary, and it was crazy bad for a lot of people. The death rate for polio among kids who got it was 3 to 5%. Holy cow, that is terrible. The death rate for adults that got polio was 15 to 30%. Take that to COVID. The survival rate is 99.9%. If you get COVID, there is an overwhelming chance that you will survive. There's a huge chance that you probably won't even get sick. We have no idea how many people actually got COVID and had no symptoms. We'll never know that. But the comparing it to polio is a ridiculous thing to do given the contrasting severity of both those diseases. So one, you can't compare it to polio. That doesn't make any sense. And two, he's talking about bad information. I don't know where he's getting his information, but it's not accurate. There is very little evidence to suggest that if you get the shot that you absolutely can't spread it, which would mean that you getting the shot doesn't necessarily protect other people, and it isn't in the public good for you to get the shot. Now we're talking, and then people are talking about, well, it could create variants. Like, okay, the variant argument, we've been over this. If you're not going to if you're going to mandate shots and you think that it's going to help crush a new variant that comes up, then you also have to block all international travel. Nobody in or out of the country for however long it takes for nobody, because if everybody in the United States got the shot today and that was going to stop a new variant, somebody else around the third world, somewhere else in the world is going to create a variant, and that's going to get to the United States. The Omicron variant is probably already here, according to every doctor who's being honest with themselves. It's probably already here. We just haven't caught it yet. So that argument doesn't make any sense. I don't know if he genuinely thinks this or is just playing into his side's hand. I seriously don't know. Because there's so much bad information out there being pushed by your liberal media, your cable news channels, your alphabet networks, your Twitter mob. There's so much bad information out there. I don't know who's being genuine and who's not. And it's super difficult to tell. This is a, let me see. This comment's from Al. He says, I got COVID, got over it, and have not been vaccinated. And that's your choice. You're allowed to do that. And I'm not going to get it either. Look, this is another thing, not necessarily to kind of in the realm of Al's comment. The whole natural immunity thing is just completely being ignored. Thankfully, there are some judges now that are saying, look, if you're going to mandate the COVID shot, you need to take into account natural immunity. But nobody in the government is talking about it at all. So the whole idea of the whole get the vaccine, you're an American. If we're not going to talk about natural immunity, none of this makes any sense. None of the mandate stuff makes any sense at all. But again, people are willing to say this sort of stuff out loud, which is ridiculous. Oh, and I didn't even hit on this. Let me play this one part of this again. Let me see if I can get it queued up in the right spot. I want you to hear what he says at here that I think people are going to be talking about.
The right to get sick, get other people sick. So it's time to admit that we have to go to war against COVID. Require vaccination universally. Have the military run it.
Require vaccination universally. Have the military run it. How? How are you going to have the military run it? Are the military going to be a logistical operation? Maybe that's what he was talking about. Just as long as we're being fair, maybe he was talking about the military being a logistics process of being able to get it people faster. But if it's going to be universally mandatory, are you saying the military should be used to threaten people who won't take it? Sounds a little 1930s Germany-ish. I don't know. You can't say that sort of stuff. Even if you think it, he's going to get away with saying that. He's going to get hit from the right, and he's not going to be talked about at all on the left. He's just going to make that comment and then continue on with whatever it is that he does, talking stocks and money, which he's often wrong about, by the way. But seriously, he's just going to get away with saying that vaccines should be mandatory and the military should enforce. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think the military should be responsible for universal mandatory COVID shots? That sounds a little bit scary. John Blanks says Kramer has gone mad. Yeah, I would agree. Jeremy says Captain Jimmy needs a reminder that we're not Nazi Germany. I didn't say it, you said it, but not necessarily disagreeing there. Absolutely not, says Karen. Jeremy also says Comrade Jimmy. That's kind of funny. Yeah, that's a universal mandatory vaccination. Sounds a little 1930s Germany-ish. I don't know how I feel about that, dude. Little drastic there, especially for a disease with a 99.97 survival rate. Yeah. Whew. There's some headlines that I wanted to get to. We won't get super into these, but I think you should know about them before we close for the day. This is Dr. Oz is in. Dr. Oz is running for Senate in Pennsylvania. If you haven't heard this yet, he was on Hannity last night talking about his run for Senate as a Republican. Now, I know a couple people that know Dr. Oz. They're not big fans of him personally. But I don't know. Who knows? Maybe this is a coming out of conservatives. He does have a show. I think it's on Fox. I see him when I'm at the gym on TV all the time. He still has a show, and he's in the public eye. And he talks about. Well, he's friendly with a lot of your super lefty types, and maybe this is a bridging of the gap. Again, he's running as a Republican in Pennsylvania. So that's going to be interesting. Maybe it's also just a media play. I don't know. Maybe this is a publicity stunt and Dr. Oz running for Senate. Also, you should know LeBron James, fully vaccinated NBA superstar, tested positive for COVID. That's really all there is to that. Other than, okay, well, there's that. Kyrie Irving still is not being able to play in the NBA because he's not able to practice or play with the Brooklyn Nets in New York because he does not have the COVID shot as a 20-something-year-old, super in shape, healthy guy. Can't play in the NBA. LeBron just tested positive, is fully vaccinated. LeBron was putting people at risk in the Lakers staff, on the Lakers team. LeBron is completely to blame for the outbreak in the Lakers locker room. Which is, I don't actually believe that, but that's how CNN would report it if it were on the other side. But again, LeBron tests positive for COVID. We're going to talk about this tomorrow. You should tune in tomorrow. And the reason we're not going into it today is because there's a school board meeting about it tonight that we're hoping to get clips of for tomorrow's show. Long Beach, California, in woke California, LA County, California, Long Beach School District, Wilson High School is going to put in, or has plans to put in, an all-gender locker room. You heard that correctly. An all-gender locker room is going into Long Beach, California high schools. We're going to talk about that more tomorrow. I know there's a lot of commentary on it. If you want to send an email on what you think about that, send it to dclive@dailycaller.com. Maybe we'll read it. Haven't been getting a ton of emails, so would love to see more of those. I know you guys comment in the comment section. It's all great. I have difficulty reading them while we're live. So if you have thoughts that you're like, this should be heard, send it to dclive@dailycaller.com. But again, we're going to talk about this whole Long Beach all-gender locker room. And the reason we're holding off until tomorrow is because there's a board meeting tonight that they're going to broadcast on YouTube. Hopefully we're going to get some clips of that, and we'll talk about it more in depth tomorrow. But again, if you have any comments, send it to dclive@dailycaller.com. Also, if you haven't already, would love a follow on all your social media platforms. Jobob on Instagram @JOBOB. Just type in JOBOB literally anywhere, you'll find me. We can have a conversation, some dialogue. I respond to a lot of things. So don't be afraid to follow me on all the Instagram, Twitters, and all that sort of stuff. And, we'll stay in touch. Keep in touch with things. I'm also hilarious on the internet. There's also that. But we'll see you right back here tomorrow with this all-gender bathroom story. It's going to be fun. We'll be back in the studio in California tomorrow. Thanks so much for tuning in while we're live abroad in Phoenix, Arizona. Also be on TPUSA Live today, this afternoon at 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. If you don't watch that show, again, I'm hilarious. You should tune in. Sitting on the couch with a couple good friends over at TPUSA. But We'll be right back in the studio tomorrow, same time, same place, same YouTube, Facebook channel, wherever you're watching. If you miss a segment of this, go grab the podcast. All the podcasts are available wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be right back here tomorrow. That's going to do it for us today. Thanks so much for tuning in. Daily Caller Live. My name is Jobob. God bless America.